What is going on, guys? This is Synergy back at you again with another video. This time is actually going to be for beginner players, a tier list guide in terms of the weapons and gear, and even OSs and DC chips for starting players of Division Resurgence. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this video is because I'm going to try my best to go in depth about weapons that I think that players should actually utilize in the beginning, because I know it's rough to be able to do those things in the beginning, to find the right weapons to be as strong. But hopefully this guide actually directs you on getting the optimized build that you rightfully deserve for how many hours you actually put into the game. I think it's very important that I do lay out that it's only going to be specific weapons for specific types, as well as it would only be specific operators, because I don't have the rest of the max out. I don't have that much time, but it's actually going to be for Bulwark Breacher, Bulwark Juggernaut, and Vanguard. The rest of the other classes would be filtered into another video when I actually have time, but for now it's going to be that T0, T1 weapons. So we're going to start with the ACR. And the ACR, more importantly, you're actually going to be able to find this weapon, and even if you find it purple, it will still have the talents. So the first talent obviously is going to be Strain or Precise Crit, whichever order you find for talent 1. And then for talent 2 is either going to be Backup Magazine, Ammo Supply, or Common Cold, whichever order you find for talent 2, depending on the circumstances. It all really depends on the RNG, so if any of those particular things drop, then that would be great for you. Then the next weapon that we're actually going to is the MK16, sorry. And the MK16, this one actually is interesting because there's a lot of suitable talents, but the one that actually works the most is Bloodlust. Bloodlust gives you that damage that you actually need, the extra damage you need, especially at lower levels, for the first talent. And then the second talent, it could be a wide combination, because there's not that many great talents for talent 2. For the MK16, you could do rapid target, medical accuracy, whichever order you actually find. But it's always important to get that first talent, because that first talent is actually going to be the damage. So now that we have that filter in, we're going to go with SMGs, and the best SMG, in my personal opinion, for piercing would have to be the Vector. Now, there's two different types of Vectors. There's one for tier 2 and then there's tier 0. Still strong weapon. You're going to be able to find one that is Strain, with Strain on it, whether it be purple or obviously T0. And then if you are lucky enough to get Performer as well too. If you don't find Performer as the second talent, any other talent is acceptable, but it's always important to get Performer, because Performer is great for SMGs. The next one we're actually going to go to is the Naval MP5. The Naval MP5 obviously is a great weapon for tier 0. You're going to actually go with Steady Hands, because Steady Hand seems to be the one talent that actually is the most useful out of the rest of the ones in talent 1 specifically, was at least within that avenue. And then for the second talent is Revitalize, which gives you, every time you kill somebody or kill an enemy, NPC or whatever, it regains back the health, which is very useful for not just SMGs, but also later on we'll explain how that would be useful for tactical rifles and assault rifles. The next one on the list is the rifle. One of my favorites is the classic M1A. This is a very useful rifle for lower levels. It definitely gets the job done. It's a blast weapon. You're gonna go with one that actually has killer for the critical hit damage, and if you can't find killer, obviously damage trade if it's available. And then for talent 2, you're gonna really try to look for I believe it's No Exit. No Exit is actually very useful for that particular rifle. If you can't find No Exit, then every other one for talent 2 is acceptable. The next one that we're actually going to go into is the 1886. I know this rifle in a way is kind of like, iffy, but if you have either bloodlust or steady reload, the gun hits like a truck. It already hits hard enough as it is. I personally believe it's a very strong shredding weapon. You can actually choose between either of bloodlust or steady reload for talent 1 if it drops, if you get lucky enough to get that, whether it be a purple or a high-end one. Then for the second one, obviously damage trade, because damage trade more damage, of course, depending on the magazine size. That would be rather useful for the 1886. Revitalize as well too if you don't find damage trade, but it all really just depends on the drops, as I stated before. The next one that we're actually going to go into is T1, and I believe that is the Police M4. Very highly recommended assault rifle for T1 if it does drop for you between the levels 20 through 30. Maybe sometimes lower it'll probably drop, but it's mainly T0. Steady aim is what I use specifically, and what I did use before I got to 40, and it was extremely useful. Whether it be a purple or a high-end one, you use steady aim for the first talent. The second talent, it all varies. I think having at least tactical reload or precise support actually is very, very helpful, and if you can't find that, any other talent too is acceptable as well. The next one, which is also my personal favorite, is the Enhance ACRE. So Enhance ACRE has a couple of great ones, but you would either have to choose between Strain or Killer. Both do great for this particular assault rifle, and those are just the ones for talent 1. Now for talent 2, I think this one actually all varies, but I believe that the most useful would be Revitalized, because of course when you're lower level and you don't have that much armor or health, killing an enemy would actually grant you that health back. So it's always good to have one for damage talent, and then the second talent would be for the other one. So the next one in my list, which is slept upon, is Type 81. Now Type 81 to me is the most used for myself. I love the weapon. So you're either gonna go with, and if it does drop with these talents, for talent 1 would be Precise Crit, and if you don't find Precise Crit, it would be Killer. And specifically those because they hit like a truck with this particular piercing rifle. And then for the second talent, of course, as I said previously, would be Revitalize. Revitalize is actually very, very useful when it comes to assault rifle in exchange for damage as well too, killing per enemy. The next one on the list, and I know this one doesn't get used a lot, is the AUG. This is the one for T1. You would obviously want to find one that actually has strain on it. Again, all SMGs, prior to what I said, actually, importantly enough, really require strain. You can't find that. Precise Trauma wouldn't be so bad, but if you find both of those would be fine. And more importantly for talent 2 would be Performer. And I know Performer is hard to get on a SMG, and more so hard enough to drop for whether it be purple or high end. But if you can't find those talents, again, everything else is suitable, and I'll explain later on as to why when it comes to the attributes. And the next one that we actually have on the list is the P90, another favorite of mine, and this one actually is going to be Precise Crit, because the P90 actually has the magazine size to be able to perform shots of skill critical hit damage as well as weapon damage, which is very, very important for talent 1. But even if you don't find this talent, P90 still hits hard enough. As well as talent 2 would be Performer. As I previously stated before, Performer is actually good, but again, if you don't find that talent on that weapon, it's fine. All the talents related to that would be acceptable. Next one on the list is the UMP, Police UMP. You would find one with Strain, and if you don't find one with Strain, Unbreakable. And I know Unbreakable is kind of like why would you want to choose that for the talent 1? Well, if you have enemies within 20 meters, you actually get granted the armor. So it's very, very useful, and I use this a lot for T2 since I've pushed mine to T2. Getting it unbreakable gives that extra armor, and it's actually useful for when you're running solos or dual elites or even heroics as well. For talent 2, you would obviously want performer. So for example, if you get unbreakable, you got one for armor, and then you have performer for damage. It's always good to have a combination and the best of both worlds for these types of SMGs at T1. And another one that's actually strong as a piercing one would be the Copperhead. The Copperhead, obviously, you would want to use Precise Crit. Precise Crit is actually very useful, again, for SMGs. And if you don't find Precise Crit, I'm sure other talents like Tormental Downfall and stuff would be useful. And for the second talent, Revitalize, because the Copperhead already has a high fire rate, and it actually knocks down or at least kills NPCs really, really fast, so you'll be able to get that exchange. If you don't find Revitalize, Thick Skin actually does work out. Again, as I stated before, damage and something that helps out with health. We're going to move over to the T1 rifles, the Aftermath. So the Aftermath, you can either choose between Killer, or I believe it would be yeah, I think it's just Killer, because I don't know any other ones that actually are useful. The one with Killer actually is useful for the Aftermath. And then for the second one would either be Damage Trade or Revitalize, whichever one actually drops. I know that, again, it's hard to get these particular drops for these particular guns, but RNG may work on your side, and you might get the best of both. You get one or the other, it is what it is. But more importantly would be Killer, if you can be able to get that on the gun. Next one on the list is the G3. I know the G3 is not frowned upon. I don't think that many people use it, but if you do happen to obtain this particular weapon, you would want to do for Bloodlust, Talent 1. Talent 1 Bloodlust actually gives that damage in dealing it. So that would actually be very useful for the G3, and just any other tactical rifle, perhaps. For the Talent 2 would actually be No Exit, or if you can't find No Exit, it would obviously be Damage Trade. But as I stated before, it's whichever that you find for either Talent 1 or Talent 2. The next one on the list is actually going to be the Urban DMR. Either choose between Killer, or if I'm not mistaken, this one actually has Steady Aim. So if you find either Steady Aim or Killer on this particular rifle, it actually gives the extra damage for this particular rifle. As well as, if you don't find that, I think that there is a health one for Talent 1. I forgot what it was called. But for Talent 2, you would want to get Calm and Cold because of the reload speed. And if you can't really get that, all other ones would obviously be fine. Again, I'll later explain as to why, because it has to do with the attributes. But the places that you would find these particular guns are specific locations such as New Enemy. A New Enemy is very random, but it's for assault rifles. If you're at a lower level, assault rifles still drop. It doesn't necessarily matter, normal or hard. And then the next one is going to be on the radio for shotguns, but sometimes it drops the tactical rifles and every other rifle. And then Wall Street obviously drops the SMG and mask. So basically, I went through that portion of the weapons in this video, and if I didn't describe it very well and I didn't do very well describing it, I apologize. My mic's a bit messed up and whatnot, but basically the attribute function. So for assault rifles or just any other particular gun, primarily for Breacher and Vanguard, you're going to want to look for multi-shot, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and headshot damage. And if you find those for the purple rifles, or purple weapons before high end for lower levels between 1 to 20, then that's acceptable. Just make sure that you find those ones with critical hit damage or headshot damage, or even weapon multi-shot, obviously more importantly for Vanguard. So we're going to get towards the gear segment of things. Gear sets are very, very important, especially for lower level. And this is my list of the particular armor that is important for Breacher and Vanguard. So you're going to go with the 4-piece set Fury. And the reason as to why is because you get the weapon critical hit chance and the weapon critical hit damage. And it's very helpful for that. And then the 2-piece Phalanx as well too, because obviously for the magazine size. And if you can't necessarily find that, then you can exchange it with something that actually helps with rate of fire, which is Gunny, for both Vanguard and Breacher. But of course, at lower levels, if it drops, even if it drops as a purple, you can still exchange. That. The only problem is that when you have purple, that you can't recalibrate it. It's only high end that you can recalibrate. So you have to just make sure you keep that in mind. You're not going to be able to find mechanical eyes until later, but if you do find one for the chest piece, you're always going to look for things for damage, like Duality is one of them, and Battle Lust. You could go for Glass Cannon, but Glass Cannon I wouldn't necessarily recommend because it does, you become very, very squishy. So I wouldn't really go as far as recommending that. And as for the backpack, Hidden Impact. It's the best in slot, and even if you get Hidden Impact 1 for any firepower backpack, because my parts, or at least my gear pieces, are all scattered apart, but you want to be able to find Fury firepower. You always want to find Fury firepower. More importantly enough, again, as I stated before, weapon critical hit chance, weapon critical hit damage, weapon multi-shot, headshot damage. This is between Breacher and Vanguard. It's different for Juggernaut. Juggernaut is armor, health. I think the best thing to do is, if you don't find Fury pieces, the next best thing is the one-shot build. It grants you the firepower, and we'll later discuss how it intertwines with the OS pieces. For those individuals wondering, always really remember to get firepower pieces for your gear, because that's very, very important. What I mean by that is firepower oriented pieces. The little symbol that you see there that's red, the blue is for toughness, and the yellow is for engineering. As for the next segment of this particular video, especially for Juggernaut, is Juggernaut obviously needs armor, right? So you're gonna go with pieces that are supposed to be shield, because the shield 4-piece set is actually really good. You could either choose between shield or fearless, but I'd recommend 4 pieces of shield, and then I would recommend 2 pieces of fearless, because both of those actually really do work out. It gives you damage deduction, and it gives you the movement speed as well too. But if you want to be able to do damage with Juggernaut, then I recommend getting those that are firepower instead of the shield, because later on in the video we'll get to why it's important to use an OS with those particular parts. But again, receive healing, armor, max health. This is all related as well to the chips, which again we'll get to. But if you want to be able to do damage as a Jug, you'll have to be able to sacrifice a little bit of armor and a little bit of health. But more importantly, for the Juggernaut portion, you're either going to get rock solid, emergency measures, and I believe there's another one, unflinching, that actually is useful. But you're going to want to farm Chinatown to be able to get the proper gear pieces. At lower levels, it all varies because it'll drop purple here, but when you get to I believe 30 to 35, you could be able to farm that to get high-end gear. The next important thing to keep in mind is the firepower mods. So the firepower mods you could be able to obtain by going into the apartments, or at least the hostile nest is what we call it. Even if you get blue or purple ones, that's still suitable for the build. At lower levels, it's very viable to get the extra damage that you need. Of course, as I stated before, it respawns every 13 minutes. You're gonna farm that as much as you can. I think it's open and available at lower levels between 15 to 30, and then by the time you get to 35 or 40, you'll have challenging and heroic, but more importantly challenging. The next thing that's actually very important, as I stated before, is the OS. Now, close quarters menace works very well with Vanguard and Breacher, and if you don't have close quarters menace, you can also go to tactical pistorulo or death from afar. These are very, very viable for Vanguard or Breacher, because each of them work in their own ways. Tactical pistorulo works as a stacking, but if you don't have any of those things, you can go with close quarters menace. It doesn't have to necessarily be maxed out. Obviously, you do the damage. It increases the damage or the DPS, so to speak. And then for Juggernaut, obviously you would use Blitz Tactics because it's the best in slot for getting your heals and then taking the damage and healing over time. If you don't have that, you would obviously get Level-Headed. Now, Level-Headed isn't as great as an OS compared to Blitz Tactics, because Blitz Tactics, obviously, as you see here, you can shoot enemies and still gain back that health and tank the damage. It's just better that way. I don't think that Level-Headed does it. I think you would have to take a certain amount of damage in order for Level-Headed to actually, receive that particular healing. And it's large chunks, of course. And if you don't have those, and I can't stress this enough, you can go for blue ones that are damage oriented. You could either go for this one or Suppressive Fire. Those are the ones that I would actually recommend, and where you would necessarily find these blue OSs to farm is, I'm sure, between levels 20 to 30. I may be wrong, somebody correct me on that. The bounty. So the bounty, I recommend grinding this on a Thursday, because at Thursday at 5 p.m. this is available, and you'll be able to farm the bounty main target and be able to get blue or purple OSs. Remember, it's all RNG, but after 5 or 10 runs you get a purple OS depending on what your luck looks like. But I recommend only doing this on Thursday. Put all your chips and marbles in and doing this on Thursday. And the next segment that we'll go into is the DC chips. And the reason why this is important is because, as I stated before, you're going to want to have, especially for Breacher, headshot damage, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, right? You're going to go with Provocateur, you're going to go with positive feedback, and then I believe the last one is King of the Pit. Obviously for Breacher. Provocateur obviously gets the aggro, while the rest of them actually do the damage. And if you can't necessarily find those, I will go into another video on an updated build to explain or express the formality of the different set types that you could be able to obtain and still get weapon critical hit chance and critical hit damage. But these are the best ones, at least in my personal opinion, to rock with. Breacher, of course. And then we're going to get into the ones for Vanguard, because Vanguard's a little bit different. At lower level, obviously, when you farm this, you don't necessarily have to get gold chips. You can either get purple or you can either get blues. You stack the blues. But for Vanguard, you're going to get these selective ones for Vanguard, but make sure that these ones have uh weapon skill shot, weapon critical hit damage, and critical hit chance. Very just one attribute different from how it would be for Breacher, and you'll be doing great amount of damage. Like I said, you have to have a minimum between skill shot damage would have to be at least to, or skill shot damage, skill shot chance, whichever, has to be at least 40%, whereas the rest of them, like skill hit, critical hit damage, would be 120%, 130%, then chance would be 40. But of course, when you get to the 30s, or at least within the 20s to 25, you'll be able to select your target loot. These are the recommended locations for lower levels. I recommend just only doing hard, just so that way you could be able to chip farm easier. My lobbies of level 40 are very different from the lobbies lower between 20 to 30s. So it's just easier. I would go into a rotation to do all the hard ones, and then take the chopper back and then reset it every particular time. But again, for lower levels, I highly recommend you just doing it on hard until you feel like you actually have the right DC chips. You stack them, you level them up, you have the right attributes, then you go for the ones on the landmarks on challenging. But for now, just only go for the ones that are on hard, so it could be a little bit easier for you. It could be easier to get chips, and you also as well get gear in this type of ordeal. It's just the easiest displacement for people who are actually wanting to have an easier way of grinding. I just want to say thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. If there's any information that I left out, or if you want to add your tier list of weapons in the comment section, I welcome you to do so. I just want to say, full disclaimer, there are some days where I explain videos in the best way possible to the highest degree, and there's some days that I don't. It's because I'm autistic. I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of that. Obviously, a lot of people who have supported me over the years know that. Sometimes I have days where the vocabulary and my speech is very good, and there's some days where, you know, I can't even fucking understand myself. So, you know, if you want to correct me, that's fine. I'm welcome to criticism and everything. I just wanted to be able to do this guide because I know how tough it is to grind the game alone, or sometimes grind the game and you have no sense of direction. There are some people that are just new to Division Resurgence and they never played any other Division game, and this is why I wanted to make this guide on tier weapons of my choice, or at least what I think would be very helpful and easier for lower levels. I left out shotguns, LMGs, and marksman rifles. I'll later put that in another video for those who are actually interested. But to make your grind easier, make sure you guys join Atlas. We are recruiting. If you are active within Division, we have open slots. I can make slots available for anybody that actually wants to join. Again, Atlas is recruiting. We welcome you guys to join our clan. We may not be the #1 clan out there, but we're growing. We play together. We do clanness. We're setting up events for DZ days, elite days, heroic runs, etc, etc, etc. So, you know, if you don't want to grind alone, if you want to be able to grind with the clan, or you want to find people that to grind with, then, you know, this is the place to be. You know, I know, again, it may be difficult to grind the game alone. It could be frustrating. And sometimes the others who are soloists, they can grind the game no problem. But we do welcome build advice. We do welcome help within our clan. So be sure to join Atlas. And if you're not a part of Atlas, or you're in a different region, I welcome you to join the community. Join the Discord. Maybe there's some advice you can give newer players or people that are unaware of their builds, and maybe your build advice will be very useful. I welcome that. But either way, thank you guys so much for the support. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. This is Synergy signing out, and take care. Peace out.